The hobby of brewing beer at home is basically dead. But what killed it? It didn't used to be this way. In the US, homebrewing was illegal until in 1978, President Jimmy Carter signed Bill H.R. 1337, and on February 1st, 1979, homebrewing officially became legal, except for in Mississippi and Alabama. That took another 34 years and is a long story. But almost overnight, kitchen brew classes and fledgling clubs appeared nationwide. That same year, Charlie Papazian helped found the American Homebrewers Association and popularized the term,
I don't say relax, don't worry, have a homebrew for nothing.
With Papazian's book in every homebrew shop, mail order ingredient kits popping up everywhere, and early internet forums fueling the hobby, home brewing rocketed. Garage brewers like Ken Grossman and Vinnie Cilurzo went pro, fueling a craft beer revolution that saw US breweries climb from 89 in 1979 to more than 4,000 by 2015. Equipment innovations brought us Brew in the Bag and all-in-one electric brewing systems, and by 2018 membership of the AHA surged past 46,000 memberships. But post-COVID, things have gone wrong. AHA memberships dropped by 30%. Homebrew Con is no more, and brick-and-mortar homebrew stores have closed at alarming rates. What the hell happened? That's the question I posed to this lady, Cat Pearce. She was the general manager of my local homebrew store, Atlantic Brew Supply, until, sadly, a few months ago, ABS also closed its doors for the last time. And Cat has some thoughts on what's gone wrong.
So I have about 4 reasons with different reasonings within those 4 reasons as to why I think that homebrew as a hobby is dying.
Told ya. Let's get into them. Oh, and just to say, this episode is sponsored by Yakima Valley Hops. More on them in a bit.
Obviously, the one that everybody talks about, which is the rise in the commercial craft beer availability. You can go to a grocery store and you can pick up just about anything that you want. And sometimes you don't want to spend all of the time to brew an excellent beer that you can just as easily find in the store and not spend all of that time and sometimes money. Speaking of money, the rise in the cost of raw materials. I think that's a reason why a lot of these homebrew shops are also closing, is because honestly, the margins just aren't that great. They're not there. And you really need to be able to have some other source of additional income in order to be able to sell these raw materials at a reasonable cost. There have been issues with the hop crops and, just the climate changing as a whole, which has made it different, not to mention, wars in Ukraine and, rise in tariffs and other things like that. Another thing that I think was a big player, just in the culture of drinking craft beer or making craft beer as a whole, was COVID. During COVID, we didn't really have the ability to meet up with our friends and share this 5-gallon keg of beer that we had. And honestly, for me, at least, it's hard getting through a keg of beer by myself or with my partner. And really, for me, beer was more of homebrewing as a whole was more of an opportunity for me to share that with my friends and share joy and talk about the different ways in which I brewed it. And, that goes along as well with the homebrew clubs. You're not able to chat with the homebrew clubs about getting advice and things like that. And I think COVID as a whole really did change the way that people also approach drinking alcohol. A lot of people moved into seltzers, and then it was THC, and it's been really different and difficult, especially even in the commercial industry, seeing the way that COVID has changed things.
Okay, let me just jump in for a sec. I know Kat mentioned 4 reasons, and we've already covered 3, but she's over-delivered. We still have 2 more to go. But before we get to that, just a quick word on today's sponsor, and that's Yakima Valley Hops. As every brewer knows, the best beer requires the best hops, which Yakima Valley Hops provides fresh from the source to brewers around the world. Carrying everything from classics like Cascade to modern favourites like Galaxy and Mosaic and many, many more. Homebrewers can select specific crop years, and most hops come in 2, 8 and 16 ounce packages. Head over to yakimavalleyhops.com to see everything they have to offer. All right. Kat, the Death of Homebrew. It doesn't have anything to do with middle-aged dudes like me, does it?
I also think that it's a generational thing.
Crap.
Younger generations, they have different types of hobbies that they're more into that are a little bit newer. And then also if they were interested in homebrewing and they went to a homebrew club, a lot of the homebrew clubs are already filled with really well-established and experienced folks, and sometimes that can be a barrier to entry itself, where, you know, a young person comes into a group of a bunch of old guys and, you know, they're sitting here talking about alpha acids and saccharification and isomerization and Maillard reactions and all of these things, but they're not doing anything to actually explain or educate what these things mean to somebody who is new. So I think part of it is education, and therefore a barrier to entry via the education. And as far as generational is concerned, older folks are aging out. I mean, lifting a whole bag of grain is not as easy as it used to be. Sometimes it's health issues. Sometimes it's just people don't have the time anymore, and or they just aren't as interested in it because they've done it for so long. I mean, you go on Facebook Marketplace and you see all of the people selling all of their homebrew equipment and things like that. And I think a lot of it has to do with time, it has to do with health, and it also has to do with partaking in hobbies outside of making and drinking beer. As the previous general manager of a homebrew shop in North Carolina called Atlantic Brew Supply, I definitely saw a lot of this occurring, and as a result of it, a lot of people too were purchasing their things online, and that essentially just removes the interaction between yourself and the folks in the shop. You know, going as these local homebrew shops are closing because of, unfortunately, the convenience of buying online, then the folks who did enjoy going into that homebrew shop lose the ability to be able to talk shop with the people there, learn more from the people who work there as a resource, talk with other people who are also shopping, actually being able to touch and feel the grain and learn more about the hop varietals that are there and what origin they come from and different styles that people hadn't thought about, and saying, hey, instead of using this extract, why don't you use puree, and this is how you're going to use it safely. Or, hey, you've got figs in your backyard, here's how you can ensure that the figs are going to be able to be cleaned and processed in a way that makes the best sense for your fermentation. I think really a lot of it is a barrier to entry for education, a barrier to entry of age in a way. Ultimately, it's just sad. And if there was one thing that I would say, it would be, don't let the hobby die.